We all wish we could bring our Disney vacation home with us, right? To have that Disney feeling every day? Well, why not start your day the Disney way with a Disney blend from Joffrey's Coffee and Tea Company? With over 23 varieties to choose from the French bistro you find in your resort room to the Yachtsman Steakhouse and Gico, of course, and now Joffrey's newest Disney blend, Le Cellier. Why not start your day with that Disney magic? Order yours today at joffreys.com.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
If you look to the left of our forward motion in the center of Bay Lake, you'll see Discovery Island, a beautiful tropical sanctuary for hundreds of rare and endangered birds.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm Tim Scott.
I'm Bob Collar.
This is ResortLoop.com. This is episode 383, and Bob, I am so excited about today's show.
I am very excited about today's show. You know, folks, Christmas is right around the corner. I mean, right around the corner.
It's coming fast.
And we have something that I think you got to put underneath the Christmas tree this year for your family.
Oh, the whole family's going to like this book. The whole family.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tim?
Yes.
Why don't you introduce our guest?
I would love to. Joining us to talk about a Disney publishing masterpiece is Mr. Chris Smith. Chris, thanks for joining us on the show.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me on. I'm a huge fan of the show, and it's hopefully going to be a lot of fun to be on with you. I think that masterpiece might be overselling a little bit.
No,
I'm going to let you go with it.
No, we'll get into that, but oh my goodness.
Right. Chris, of course, he is the author of, and if you guys don't have this book, make sure you get this book. He is the author of The Walt Disney World That Never Was. You can pick that up on Amazon. The Walt Disney World That Never Was, Stories Behind the Amazing Imagineering Dreams That Never Came True by Christopher E. Smith. Write that down. We'll have links to it on the show.
Absolutely.
This book, Tim and I are very careful about things that we promote on the show because we get a lot of people wanting us to promote their stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Chris, this book is fantastic.
Man, you guys are really talking me up. I may need to go back and read it one more time also.
I think you know the whole thing by heart.
Thank you very much for saying that.
Absolutely. So let's start at the beginning. How do you fall in love with Walt Disney and Walt Disney World in particular?
Yeah. What's your backstory?
Sure. So, guys, by day I'm a corporate attorney, and I practice in Huntsville, Alabama. And for those that don't know, Huntsville is probably not what most people think about when they think of Alabama in general. It's kind of a very high-tech town. There's the Marshall Space Flight Center, a lot of cool stuff that happens here. But I grew up in a very small town about an hour west of Huntsville called Speake. And Speake is probably the type of place that most people think about when they think of Alabama. It's very rural, a lot of farms, a lot of good folks. And growing up there, I kind of had to use my imagination, during the day to entertain myself. And I don't know if you guys remember, my family was one of the first to get one of those big satellite dish receivers back in the early 80s.
Oh, like the 8 and 10 feet ones, not the little ones.
That's right. And so when you combine that imagination with me getting to watch the Disney Channel, oh my goodness, it was love at first sight. And so my parents finally clawed and scraped enough money to take me down to Walt Disney World when I was 7. And it completely blew my mind. I'm sure my wife wishes probably now that I hadn't gone that first time, and maybe my obsession would be a little less so. But it's kind of what I told you guys before we got on that, after that first trip and with all these successive trips that I've gone on, it has just reinforced to me that Walt Disney World is truly a magical place, and it's a place where even adult corporate attorneys like me can become kids again, even if just for a small amount of time.
Absolutely. It sounds to me, Tim, an awful lot like a little place called Marceline, Missouri.
It does. Oh my goodness.
You know what I'm saying?
I know.
I'm just saying.
I will say this: Marceline had a street with shops on it, which is more than we had. But I'll take the comparison.
No Main Street for you.
That's right.
So Chris, all right. So you love Disney. We all love Disney. But you wrote a book about some stuff that most people don't write books about, which is the stuff that actually never came to be at Walt Disney World. How did you even come up with that idea, and how did you go about researching something like this?
Sure. So, as a part of my Disney fandom, I started just kind of collecting different things, and being the Disney nerd that I am, years ago I started collecting corporate annual shareholder reports for the Walt Disney Company. And for a corporate attorney, that both makes sense and is also completely sad in a lot of ways. But
I will say this: being a stockholder, they got great pictures, though. I understand.
Right. And so for folks who don't know, these reports are essentially kind of, they tell shareholders how the company performed in the past year and looking ahead to future things. But looking back, when I got my hands on some of those old reports back from the 60s, the late 60s especially, and the early 70s, I read about these concepts and saw these drawings about these amazing things like Thunder Mesa and like these other resorts that were planned for the Seven Seas Lagoon that looked amazing, that I knew never came to be. And so that kind of sparked a curiosity to try to dig more into these things and find out what they were and why they never came to be. And so that led to some really extensive research through old corporate records and old marketing materials and firsthand Imagineering accounts. And the result was these really what I think are amazing stories about not only these attractions and experiences that never came to be, but maybe even more interesting is, how they came to be and why they weren't constructed, because I think those are the stories of the Walt Disney Company itself and the company's response and reactions to things like Walt's death or global economic issues and even internal Imagineering squabbles. It was just really a fascinating topic that I really just couldn't get enough of.
Well, you certainly cover all of those because as I was reading your book, it was amazing to me that there were the infighting between Imagineers. There was infighting between the Imagineers and the executives. But the thing that I really took away from was the amount of work and detail and expense that Disney is put forth in both the artists, the executives, and the Imagineers to create things that just never came to be. That was amazing to me. I mean, we're talking about they had some models and artist renderings and all of these things, the budgets and everything to put these things together, and then they never came to be. That was what I took away from the book that amazed me so much.
That really is kind of a fascinating piece of it, because you're right. I mean, these different concepts that never came to be, they kind of range the spectrum of ideas that never kind of made it past the blue sky brainstorming sessions. But a lot of them were literally on the doorstep of being constructed, some of which even some initial construction work began. But because of a variety of reasons, despite intense marketing and I'm sure substantial expense in getting ready to do these projects, they just drifted away. But I will say this: one of the overarching themes of the book is that good ideas never truly die. And what's amazing to me is the number of attractions that are present and experiences that are present in Walt Disney World today that somehow, are a derivative concept from one of these original plans that never came to full fruition.
One of the other things too, you had talked about in the book when you are talking in the book, you talk about the things that when they first were designing Walt Disney World, they had so many ideas to stay away from what was going on at Disneyland. And yet they came back and said, we still have to do these things. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that, I'm glad you asked me that, because, if you think about it, if we kind of take a step back in time to the late 1960s when plans for what became known as Walt Disney World were underway, at that point in time, there was only the one park, Disneyland in California. And so Imagineers and Disney executives were kind of faced with this dilemma of, what do we make the park? Do we replicate Disneyland? Do we come up with completely new concepts, or do we mix the two? And the end result was mixing the two, but it was an extremely set of difficult decisions that were faced in terms of which attractions from Disneyland do we replicate in Walt Disney World, because we want to build off the goodwill that Disneyland has established with guests, but we also want to make sure we have some new 'offerings so that it's not just another Disneyland. And an example of that is, 3 Fantasyland dark rides that opened up with the Magic Kingdom were Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, which I have a soft spot in my heart for that attraction, Snow White's Adventures, which later became Snow White's Scary Adventures, and then Peter Pan's Flight, which remains one of the most popular attractions in all of Walt Disney World. Well, initial plans called for 3 different dark rides to replace those concepts. And I know the Peter Pan fans out there may think that's blasphemous, but Imagineers considered adding a Mary Poppins based attraction in lieu of Peter Pan's Flight, a Sleeping Beauty attraction in lieu of Snow White, and then finally, very interesting to me, a Sleepy Hollow based attraction in lieu of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. That's also very interesting to me because of the close connection that those two franchises have because of the 1949 package film, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. And it was, even though those Disneyland attractions were immensely popular, Imagineers and executives initially wanted to make these different attractions to bring in some new excitement. Now, as we know today, because of financial issues, the decision was ultimately made to just go ahead and replicate those existing rides and save on the expense of creating new ones. But that's just an example of this dilemma that all the Disney folks face themselves in of what to replicate versus what to create new.
So with that being said, you have got to tell, and we're not going to give away the whole book.
No, not too much.
You have got to tell the story about how Pirates of the Caribbean came to Florida.
Sure. And, I'll tell you, and I even say this in the book, that if the Walt Disney World that never was a Hall of Fame, then Thunder Mesa would be Babe Ruth. Okay. This is a concept that a lot of Disney fans have heard about, but don't really understand, what it was to encompass. So the story of Thunder Mesa, and guys, getting a corporate attorney who loves Disney talking about Disney, you got to be careful. So I'll try to give this a quick run through. But it starts with an Imagineer named Mark Davis, and if folks don't recognize the name Mark Davis, then they certainly will recognize his work. He was a brilliant Imagineer that started with the Disney Company in the 30s, originally as an animator. And Mark brought to life characters like Snow White and Aurora and Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty and Tinkerbell and Alice from Alice in Wonderland. Just this amazing list of characters that he brought to life. Well, eventually he transitioned over to working on attractions for Disneyland. And the 2 attractions that he's most well known for are the Haunted Mansion, and then of course Pirates of the Caribbean, which was just remains an amazing ride in Disneyland. And so, after investigating some other park options throughout the country, Mark was tasked for Walt Disney World of coming up with new ideas. And so here's what really gets my blood pumping, guys, and gets me excited when I think about the concept is you have this brilliant Imagineer Mark Davis, and this is the goal he sets for himself: create the greatest attraction concept the Disney company has ever done. Okay, and he set out to do just that, right? So this project was called Thunder Mesa. Now, Thunder Mesa was not an attraction per se. It was essentially a sub area of Frontierland. It was going to be this massive show building that included a mine train type roller coaster attraction, which was the birth of what would become Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, and then the true star of the show, which would have been the Western River Expedition, and roughly it would have been a Wild West version of Pirates of the Caribbean. So, taking a step back to what we were just talking about, why in the world wasn't Pirates of the Caribbean included in the original plans for the Magic Kingdom? As funny as it may sound today, Disney executives thought that Florida was too close to the Caribbean, that it would not be a unique enough concept. And one of the really cool finds I found in these old shareholder reports was a statement that Disney thought that visitors would be visiting Disney World in connection with trips to the Caribbean, right? Now,
Sure.
I've been to Walt Disney World a ton of times and have never used that in conjunction with a trip to the Caribbean, but that's what those folks thought.
Well, if you think about this, though, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
Sure.
If you think about it, back then, that's where people were going from the East Coast. They were heading down to the islands. They were trying to really get a good vacation. There was nothing in Orlando that pulled. I mean, once Disney and now Universal and SeaWorld and all the other things that are in Orlando came into being, then it became that destination. But before that, I can understand where they were coming from. Oh, well, they're just going to stop in here for a little bit, and then they're going to continue their vacation where they normally vacation.
Right. If people went to Florida, it was Miami and Fort Lauderdale was the place.
Right.
And guys, and they were convinced of this because you're talking about a ride, Pirates of the Caribbean, that was the most popular ride in the park at Disneyland. And because of the weekly Disney television series where they advertised Pirates of the Caribbean, it was really a cultural phenomenon. And so, but they didn't include it in the initial plans for the Magic Kingdom. Well, Thunder Mesa, also because of the substantial scope of the project, also carried with it a big price tag. So it got pushed off from the opening day plans to a couple of years down the road. Well, guess what happened when the Magic Kingdom opened in 1971? Folks who had either visited Disneyland or had heard of Pirates of the Caribbean or had seen it on the television show, they showed up to the park and they started asking, where the heck is Pirates of the Caribbean? We want this attraction. And I can't overstate how big of a wave of public demand was for this. And so the Disney company almost immediately reacted to this. I mean, literally, cast members were getting tired of folks coming up to them and asking them, where are the pirates? And so the Disney company made the decision to task, go figure, Mark Davis specifically, and other Imagineers with creating an abbreviated version of Pirates of the Caribbean for the Magic Kingdom. And they did that. Thank goodness. It's one of my favorite attractions today. But creating the Pirates attraction was one of the blows to Thunder Mesa that, along with some other things that prevented it from coming to be, because, you didn't need a Western version of Pirates of the Caribbean because you already had Pirates of the Caribbean there in the park. Right.
And you cover that in that section. The chapter is Thunder Mesa, and the section is Where Are the Pirates? Right. And it was great because it lets us know as Disney fans that we can, as long as we are vocal enough, affect change in the parks. So if there's something we want to do, we can do that. But what a great section. It's you go into so much depth about how then they got pirates in there and all of the factors. There were so many factors that finally killed that Thunder Mesa project. And it's unfortunate because, oh my gosh,
would have been
thing would have
amazing.
Fantastic.
Wow.
And just one more quick thing on Thunder Mesa, guys, is I'm a little conflicted about it because I think it would have been perhaps the most amazing attraction, area that the Disney company had done because of who was involved and these grand plans that we know were in place. But the flip side of that is two of my most favorite attractions in all of Walt Disney World are Big Thunder Mountain Railroad and Splash Mountain. And to the extent we would have gotten Thunder Mesa, we probably would not have gotten those attractions in Frontierland. So you have to be careful what you wish for because the things you enjoy today may not have been there if Thunder Mesa.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. One of the things I love about your book too is you point out where some of the remnants or they pay homage to the concepts.
Yes.
Are like you can find parts of Thunder Mesa in Big Thunder Mountain.
Yes, and that was one of the the book is structured so that for each of these concepts that never came to be, I talk about how they came to be in the first place, what we know about the actual concept. In other words, what would the attraction have been, why it never happened, and then where you can find maybe some of these little hidden gems and finds that are salutes to those in the parks. And when the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad queue was substantially revamped not too long ago, a lot of little Easter eggs that pay homage to Mark Davis and Thunder Mesa and the Western River Expedition can be found there. And I just think that's just very cool. That the Imagineers today still pay homage to some of these old concepts.
It's like an updated Hunt for Hidden Mickeys also.
Yes.
Kind of along those lines.
That's right. You got to have something to do.
I love it.
Right.
Hey, Chris, could you touch on... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Tim. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I was going to just move ahead a little bit. Chris, I want to know if you could mention, because when I heard about the title of your book, The Walt Disney World That Never Was, I was hoping you were going to touch on the resorts that were initially going to be built. Because they were displayed on the maps in the Contemporary and the Polynesian back in the 70s. You could see the Asian, but the Venetian and the Persian.
Right.
They were just displayed right there, and you'd look out the window and you're like, I could see maybe where they're going to go, but they were never built. Could you talk a little bit about that without giving too much away?
Sure. So, the original plans for the resorts there at Walt Disney World called for 5 resorts. Today we have 3. We have the Contemporary, the Polynesian, and the Grand Floridian. The original plans didn't even call for the Grand Floridian. It did include the Polynesian and the Contemporary, but as you just mentioned, 3 other grand themed resorts were planned. One was going to be called the Asian. That would have a very strong Thai influence, and it would have been located approximately where the Grand Floridian is today. You'd have also had the Venetian, which would have been a Venice, Italy themed resort that would have been, it would have been amazing, guys. Maybe the most romantic resort at Walt Disney World. A series of intricately, detailed canals throughout the resort, fine dining, and this would have been located between the Ticket and Transportation Center and the Contemporary. You can see just kind of a small wooded area there today. And then finally, what might have been what I think one of the coolest resorts at Walt Disney World, the Persian, which would have looked like this opulent Middle Eastern resort with a grand central courtyard, a huge blue domed structure. And what's interesting about the Persian is that it would have been located adjacent to where Tomorrowland is, just north of the Contemporary and Bay Lake Tower. And so literally you'd been right beside the Magic Kingdom. And all of these resorts were planned to have monorail connections there to be on the monorail loop for you guys. And the cool thing about the Persian is there were a couple of different plans. One was to have just a spur of the track to connect to the Persian, but other plans included for the track to actually go through Tomorrowland, and man, that would have been definitely fun stuff. And as you mentioned, they marketed all these resorts very heavily, and all of the early marketing publications and materials, maps showing the Seven Seas Lagoon, renderings of these resorts, they put it out there, a lot, but because of economic issues, unfortunately, they just never came to be.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You speaking of Seven Seas Lagoon, since we're around Seven Seas Lagoon, why don't you tell folks where World Showcase was originally planned? This blew me away, by the way. This blew me away.
I was shocked when I saw this. Originally, World Showcase was going to be a separate park, a standalone park, and it was going to be located on the Seven Seas Lagoon, very near to where the Ticket and Transportation Center sits today. And we see in some of the old corporate disclosure documents, there's even a rendering that shows the monorail running through this World Showcase concept and to the Contemporary and then to the Magic Kingdom. But one thing to keep in mind, I know you guys know this from the book, is that this original concept of World Showcase was much different than what we see today in Epcot. World Showcase was going to be essentially two semicircular indoor buildings, and so you would walk inside these different pieces of a pie, if you will, to experience the different nations represented, and you'd have this central courtyard in between the buildings, but definitely a very different concept than what eventually occurred at Epcot.
Yeah, that amazes me that it was going to be at World Showcase, and then when they did decide to put it in Epcot, it was just going to be in these buildings.
Right. And obviously that idea morphed and changed, but I think guys, what that really shows you, and we see this from the research, is that the Disney company had big plans for this World Showcase concept. Mm-hmm. They thought this was going to be a very big opportunity for them, and they thought that sponsorship dollars that they could get from either the participating nations or major corporate donors from those nations would help self-fund these big plans, because as we also talk about in the original plans for Epcot, World Showcase was supposed to be at the front of the park with the Future World area at the back. And because of some trouble with getting the needed funding, things had to be changed around a little bit. But, and maybe it's just the Disney nerd in me, but man, that's just amazing, concepts to think about a World Showcase park there on the monorail resort, on the monorail loop there.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, I absolutely love the book. It's a book on the things that never happened in Walt Disney World, but it's also a history on the Disney company, because you cover in depth how things happened and kind of a timeline of how things happen. And not only that, but you explain why sometimes things that were happening in the United States and sometimes things that were happening in the world actually kept Disney from creating some of the things that they could have in Walt Disney World.
Yeah, that's right. A couple examples are the September 11th attacks when they occurred in the early 2000s. Construction, because of the certainly a lot of things happened after that, but a major economic trickle-down effect where folks just weren't traveling as much, and the Pop Century Resort, which was originally planned to be two separate areas, the classic years and the legendary years, the entire project had to be halted, and then when it was picked back up, they decided to just go with one half of that, because folks still just weren't, while the economy was recovering, people just still weren't traveling as much as they used to be. And another example, and this ties in with the Seven Seas Lagoon resorts we were just talking about, was the OPEC oil embargo in the early 70s, and the tremendous trickle down effect that had on the global economy, including the United States. And at that point, Disney had a lot of plans that they were trying to implement, and what they had to do was kind of shift focus to really focus on those specific areas that they were convinced that would bring more people there, as opposed to things like resorts that would just house the folks once they did get there.
What, Chris? What one thing that they didn't build would you like to have seen them build?
Oh my goodness, guys! That's like asking me who my favorite child is. For me, and I think it's kind of relevant today because of what we see going on in the animal kingdom today with the Pandora expansion there. But it's Beastly Kingdom as a whole, and then Dragon Tower specifically. And the area that was formerly Camp Minnie Mickey, from the very beginning, even from the initial planning stages for the Animal Kingdom, was planned to be this, I call it a fantasy land for the animal realm, essentially animals of myth and legend and folklore. And we see just tremendous amounts of information about what this land could have been. It would have been divided into two areas, a good realm and an evil realm. And the evil realm would have included this attraction called Dragon Tower. And just the theming, I think, that could have been behind this thing. We're talking about a massive crumbling stone castle where when guests are entering the queue, you see these scorched shields and broken swords and lances that kind of line the walkway. And you would encounter these funny audio animatronic bats that would broker a deal with you to try to steal the treasure from the castle, but go figure, a massive dragon will be guarding it. At that point, I think it would have been the largest audio animatronic character ever created. And man, I think that Beastly Kingdom as a whole, but Dragon Tower specifically, could have been a wonderful addition, because what I think Dragon Tower specifically was going to be was kind of what Expedition Everest is today. It's not only a focal point for a specific land, but really one of, if not the centerpiece attractions for the animal kingdom as a whole. And I think it would have been a breathtaking attraction.
I know when I was reading your chapter on Beastly Kingdom, all I kept thinking was it would have cost them so much less money if they would have just done that. That's when, and I know you're an attorney, so
right.
This isn't on you. This is on me. That's when Michael Eisner had kind of went off the trail, and had he not messed with animals that I'm sure cost them so much money every year, had he just gone with the Beastly Kingdom, it would have cost less money. In the book, you talk about how some of the things that happen down the street at Universal now probably have put the nail in the coffin for Beastly Kingdom, if you will. And that's what I took away from it as I was reading that chapter. I'm like, oh,
it really is. It's kind of excruciating for a Disney fan to read that and see why it's not there. But you're exactly right. When they were planning this park, the emphasis was, you got three distinct types of animals: real, ancient, and imagined. And they focused their attention on real animals initially, and transforming that Florida landscape into an area to hold animals 24 hours a day. I mean, it was a massive undertaking. And another theme of the book you'll see is that when you're dealing with large construction projects like this, you always go over budget.
Oh yeah.
But with this particular project, they went so far over budget that unfortunately sacrifices had to be made, and Beastly Kingdom was punted until later. And as we know now, that unfortunately just never came to be. Now, I will tell you guys, I am one of the few people who will admit today that they enjoyed Avatar the movie, and so I'm sure that what they're doing is going to be amazing and wonderful. But I can't help but long for the concepts of Beastly Kingdom and what all that would have included.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
No, you're right. Well, I can tell you this: there are two things that I would love to have seen, and you folks are going to have to read the book if you want to know what they are, if you don't know. First off, I would have loved to have seen Villain's Mountain.
Nice. That
would have been a good one. And what I really, really, really want to see, and maybe they can do this since they didn't get rid of it, I really, really want to see the Great Muppet Movie Ride.
Oh, yes.
That sounds fantastic. So...
I won't get going on that, but golly, the Great Muppet Movie, that would have been. I just kicked myself thinking about it, and maybe with the re-emphasis on Muppets that we're getting, maybe one day that concept will come to be. Because and I know you guys need to finish up, but one of the other kind of overarching themes of the books, I know I've said a couple already, but it's that some of these old concepts that we never saw are sometimes the best indications of what will come. Right. I mean, I imagine an Imagineering room where all these concepts are there, and then one day somebody just goes and pulls it off the shelf, revamps it a little bit, and boom, we get it. And so I hope that both of those that you just mentioned will fall into that category, and maybe one day we'll get something along those lines.
I'm hoping for that with one of those resorts we were just talking about.
Yes.
I'd love to see one of those built.
Yeah.
And my little teaser to buy the book, by the way, is that a couple of the animatronics that were made for Thunder Mesa are somewhere in Epcot.
What?
I know. That's a little teaser to go buy this book. You're gonna love this book.
There
Absolutely. You are exactly right, Tim. This book, it's not just for Disney fans, folks. If you have somebody who's just interested in some history about the Disney company, or just it's such a great read. It's an easy read. It's not real convoluted. Chris made sure that it's very easy for everything's in layman's terms. There's nothing, even though he's an attorney, there's no legal speak in there. But it really is. It's really good for Disney fans, but it's really good for just people who are just starting to learn a little bit about Disney, because you give so much background on everything Disney, on the entire company as a whole, and some of the things that they were thinking about, and Walt was thinking about, and Roy was thinking about. And, it's a really, really good read. You talk about the infighting of the Imagineers. You talk about the politics between two really, really big players in Hollywood,
big names,
and why we're really thrilled that David Copperfield's Magic Underground never showed up. But anyway.
Well,
great book.
I thank you for saying all those nice things. It was a labor of love, and it's a book that I'm very proud of. But thank you all very much for saying that. It means a lot.
Absolutely. You guys remember, you can pick it up on Amazon. Is there any place else people can grab your book, Chris?
Sure. Over at Theme Park Press, my publisher Bob McLean's website. When I had the idea to write a book, I knew where to go because I looked on my own bookshelf. I'm also a Disney book collector and had a lot of Theme Park Press titles. And if they want to get my book or are interested in adding other books, that's definitely a good place to look.
Excellent.
Great.
Tim?
Yes.
That is all I've got for Chris Smith, author of the Walt Disney World That Never Was.
Awesome. Chris, thanks for joining us on the show. Pleasure to have you on.
Hey, guys. It was a lot of fun. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, anytime. Love to have you on again. My name's Tim Scott. You can find me on Twitter and Facebook at Tim Scott, and the website, ResortLoop.com.
Don't forget Facebook /Resort Loop. And where are we at? Where else? I'm not even sure where else we're at. We're on YouTube.
We're on YouTube. I'll tell you, if you'd like to send us a review over to iTunes, that'd be fantastic. Everybody, this has been The Gateway to the Magic.
See you, everybody. All right, Tim, so everybody has, they've stopped listening to the show now. What should they do after they're done listening to the show and they're all excited about wanting to go to a Disney park, going on a Disney vacation? What should they do?
I, personally, after being all excited and ready to go,
I'm
going to deal with an expert. I'm going to talk to People Mover Travel and talk to Tyler, our expert over there.
Over at peoplemovertravel.com?
Peoplemovertravel.com.
But when you go there,
yes,
you got to make sure you click on that you heard about them from us.
From Resort Loop.
Resort Loop.
That is an option on the drop-down menu right there.
Absolutely. By the way, Tim.
Yes.
I just booked through them.
How did that go?
It was the easiest thing in the world.
How can it not be? It's Tyler.
I put in my name. I put in the dates I want.
Right.
Of course, check-marked. Resort Loop is where I heard of them from. And sent it off to him. Within an hour, Tyler had gotten back to me. I can't guarantee he's going to get back to everybody that quick, but got back to me within an hour. letting me know he got it, and he'll let me know as soon as he runs the numbers.
Tyler and his team know travel.
PeopleMoverTravel.com is fantastic.
Love.
Easy. You and I have done it a million times on our own.
And we missed out on discounts here and there because we're not on top of it all the time.
I'm done doing that.
Why would we have to do it? Tyler, People Mover Travel, will do it for you.